Hi everyone, myself Dr. M. Lakshmi Prasad, working as an associate professor in the Department of Data Science in Institute of Aeronautical Engineering, Hyderabad. In this video, I'm going to discuss about what are the various steps of data science we have to be followed. So, very first thing, already you know that data science is the art of science and then the science of acquiring knowledge through the data. So, acquiring the data through art or through science, what we're acquiring, so that should be comes under the data science. So the data science is all about how we're going to take the data, and at the same time how we're going to use it to acquire the knowledge, and then uh, how we're going to use that knowledge for the following things, mainly for making decisions and then predicting the future, and then understand the past and present, and then create a new industries and product, right? So the data science is all about how we're going to take the data and how we're going to use the acquired knowledge, and then through that knowledge, what kind of things we can able to do. So for that, we are having to do making decisions is the thing, and then predicting the future, and then understand what should be the past and present, and then creating the new industries and new products. So understanding the data science is going to be begins in three basic areas. So first thing is that mathematics and statistics should be known, and then we have to be know about the computer programming, and we have to be know about the domain knowledge. So these three things should be compulsory in order to make this understanding of data science. So right, so very first thing is that mathematics and statistics. So using of equations and formulas, we can able to perform the analysis, and through computer programming means where you can able to use any kind of programming. So especially nowadays, the Python programming is going to be used for that. We can able to create the outcomes in the computer, and then domain knowledge is the thing, so which can able to refers the understanding the problem domains like medicine, finance, social science, and so on, right? So mathematics is the thing, and computer programming and domain knowledge. So domain knowledge, we can able to apply this for in different applications or domains like medicines, finance, social science. In this field, normally we're having different types of data available for that. Normally, this data is going to be classified into two different types. One is the thing structured and unstructured data, and sometimes what we can able to call it as organized and unorganized. And second thing is that quantitative data and qualitative data. So like this, the data is going to be classified into different categories. So normally there should be the data, right? So there should be different types of flavors are available. So what kind of data it is normally, like whether it is a structured data or unstructured data, or organized, unorganized, or quantitative and qualitative. So organized data, what is organized data? So this is the data which should be sorted into row and column structure, and where every row going to represent the single observation, and the columns going to represent the characteristic of the observation, right? So the data what we are going to be organized, so the thing is that the data is going to be sorted into either in the form of rows and then columns, and each row is going to represent the single observation, and column is going to be represent the characteristic of that observation. And unorganized data, so unorganized data means this is also other kind of the data which is that free form, usually a text or raw audio signals that might be passed for that to become to be organized. So organized data means where the data should not be in any particular order. So normally the data should be in different some other ways where they should be free of forms, right? Normally the text how it will be, and then draw audio and signals, and that should be going to be converted into organized one. So organized means we're able to represent the data in some specific order, like either I can able to represent the form of rows and columns, or can able to provide some tree like structure. So this and all will be the organized data. So unorganized means they should not be get any form of that one. And next one is structured and then unstructured data. The structured data is sometimes we can able to call it as organized data, and unstructured data are sometimes also called as unorganized data. So structured data means this should be the thought of observations and then characteristics, and which is going to be usually organized by a table method that should be in the rows and columns. And unstructured data means that this data is going to be exist as a free of entity and does not allow any kind of data organization hierarchy, right? So the structured data means it should be the thought of characteristics and observations, right? And this data is going to be in the form of table method. Unstructured data, so where can able to represent this on free of entity and does not allow any kind of catalyst. So these are the some of the various levels of data normally. So the data is going to be organized into two different types. The first one is qualitative and second one is quantitative. So qualitative means where you can able to should not represent the form of measurements. So where the data is going to represent in the form of measurements like height in centimeters, weight in kgs, like that should be comes under quantitative data. So qualitative data means where the data is not going to be represented in measurements. So quantitative means where can able to represent the data in measurements. Okay. So again, this quantitative data is going to be classified into two types. So first one is that nominal data, and second one is that ordinal data. So nominal means some of the examples like gender. So gender means either it may be men or women. There should not be any characteristic or measurement here. And then hair color, that should be blonde hair or brown hair. And authenticity like Hispanic or Asian. And this and all will comes under nominal data. Ordinals in the sense, so it should be some order we have to be follow, like first, second, and third places in running race, and letters of grades like A, B, C, and economic status where it should be low, medium, high, like this. This kind of data will comes under the ordinal one. Okay, so what is the data we are having that should be represented in the form of nominal or can able to represent in the form of ordinal. So nominal in the sense we should not have any kind of measurements, and then characteristics of particular thing should be considered as nominal. So nominal, suppose gender is the thing, hair color, and then authenticity. So suppose if I'm going to take the gender here, so it should be either men or women, and then color means blonde and brown hair, and authenticity like Hispanic or Asian. Similarly, the ordinal in the sense where it should be first, second, and third, and attributes like ABC and economic status low, medium, high. Like this, I can able to categorize the data in the form of nominal and ordinal. And next thing is that the quantitative data. So the quantitative means where can able to represent the data in the form of discrete one or can able to represent in the form of continuous one. So discrete means where I can represent this in the form of number of students in the class. One of the example, let it be for 60 or 65, and similarly number of workers in the company, that should be 700, and the number of home runs in baseball game, let it be 10, like this. So this then the data which should comes under discrete one, right? So discrete in the sense number of students and number of workers, like a number of home runs. This and all comes under the discrete data. So continuous data. So the continuous data means where the data is going to be changed based on the time, like height of the children. So the height of the children is going to be increased by every month in centimeters, and similarly the square footage of two-bedroom house, right? Suppose one day one person is going to be think one size, and the second time it is going to be changed a little bit, and then the speed of the cars. So the speed of the car is going to be changed from 40 to 60, 60 to 10, 20, like this. So the data is going to be changed based on the time, right? So that all comes under continuous one, right? So what is the data I'm having that should have measurements? So that thing should be categorized into two forms, like discrete one and then continuous one. So discrete means the number of workers in the company, number of home runs in baseball game, like. And similarly continuous means the data is going to be depends on the time the data is going to be changed, like height of the children, speed of the cars, like this. So when it comes to the steps of the data science, data science is going to be follows a structure, or it should be followed by step process. So when involved should be the preserve some of the integrity of the results. There are five essential steps should be defined in the data science, like asking an interesting question and then obtaining the data, exploring the data, modeling the data, and then communicating and visualizing the results. Right. So the steps should be data science should be either be a structured one or it may be a step-by-step process which can able to follow through the results, then the integrity of the results. So there are five essential steps to be performed in data science. So first thing is that asking an interesting question is the thing, obtaining the data, exploring the data, modeling the data, and fifth one is communicating and visualizing the results. So these are the steps we have to be followed. Let's see one by one. So very first thing is that asking an interesting question. So for this, very first thing is the first step is the first step, and all the time we can able to treat this step as the brainstorming session. So interesting questions to get the data, and then writing down questions, regardless of whether or not you can able to think the data is going to answer these questions even exists or not. So the reason should be in a twofold. So that's why. So the first thing is that you should not want to start biasing yourself even before the searching the data. And secondly is that so the data what way uptime that should might involve in searching both in private and public locations, so that the information may not be straightforward. Okay, so the interesting question. So this is the very first step of the data science where you can able to treat it as, and all the time can able to consider this step as a brainstorming session, and you can able to start write down the questions, what you are going to think about the data, and then try to getting the answers from these questions. So the reason for this is mainly for twofold, right? So first thing is that, so if you don't want to start biasing yourself, so even before the searching for the data, and second thing is that, so try to get consider the data both in the public locations as well as the private locations, so that the information may not be straightforward. And the second step is that obtaining the data. So once you have selected the question, so you want to focus on how it will be. Suppose it is the time to score the world for the data that may be able to answer that question. So as mentioned before, like the data what is coming from the variety of sources, this should be the creative one, right? So obtaining the data means how we're going to obtain the data based on once the questionnaire is done. So this questionnaire, once it is completed, we can able to extract the data not only through multiple sources. I can able to abstract it like primary and secondary. I covered some of the sources in previous slides. And next one is that explore the data. So explore the data means this should be the pivot step in the process. So exploring means once this step is going to be completed, so what will happen here is so that the analyst can able to generally spend some several hours learning about the domain and using the code or other tools to manipulate or can able to explore the data, right? So it should also have very good sense of what the data might trying to tell him. So this is the way of exploring the data. So the exploring the data is very forward step in the process, and through this step you can able to explore the data in multiple forms. So by using of code, I can able to use or I can able to use some of the tools to explore the data, or I can able to manipulate the data. So the exploring the data is not that much defined simply. So it should be involves the ability to recognize the different types of data and then transform the data types and use code to systematically improve the quality of entire data set to prepare it from the modeling stage. So in order to best represent this, the art of exploration is the thing. So, but I would like to present some of the different data sets that can able to use some Python packages like pandas to explore the data. So the exploring the data is not that much simple. So we have to make use of many tools and techniques for exploring the data. So normally if I'm going to use it, right, so that we can able to make use of this Python packages pandas. So normally going to be used to explore the data. So along this, we can also able to run it into different tips or tricks to how we're going to be handle the data. So that should also be considered. And there may be some of the three basic questions that we can able to ask ourselves. So when dealing with new data that may not be seen before. So keep in mind that these the questions are not the beginning and ending of the data science, but there should be some guidelines that should be followed when exploring a newly obtained set of data. So what is the data once the exploring that should be able to see in different tips or different ways in order to handle it, and some of the basic questions may also comes in order to deal with the new data that may not be seen before. And keep in mind this these questions may not be the beginning or ending of the data science. So some of the basic questions that may come from data exploration is that, so when we're going to look a new set of data, right? So whether it should be familiar to you or not, but it is very important to use the following question as the guideline for the preliminary analysis. So is the data is going to be organized or not? We have to be think it of, and then we're going to be make a continuous check. So whether the data is going to be presented in nominal and in the form of rows and column structure or not. And most of the part is that the data should be presented in an organized fashion. And nevertheless, This is the most basic question that we can able to answer before dividing any deeper into analysis, right? So these are some of the questions that may come for data exploration. So first thing is that when I'm going to look at the new data, so some people may be something may be familiar and something may not be familiar. So at the time, what you have to do is you have to make use of these questions what I had told previously as the guideline for the preliminary analysis. And next thing is that is the well, you have to check it out whether the data is organized or not. We can able to check for whether or not the data is presented in the form of rows and structure. So once this one is not in the form of rows and structure, what you have to do, you have to compulsory convert it into the rows and then columns. For most of the part is that the data should be presented in the organized fashion only. So nevertheless, so the most basic question is that we can able to answer before dividing any deeper into analysis. A general rule of thumb is that what we are going to be unorganized data. So for that, what we have to do is so we have to convert this into the form of rows and column structure. So that is the basic we have to be applied in the thing. And for example, if you are going to look at the ways to transform the text in rows and columns by counting the number of words and then phrases, right? Suppose if I'm going to a simple example like, suppose if you are going to look at the ways to transform the text in rows and columns. So first thing is that you have to count the number of rows and the words and then phrases. Then, so what does the each row represent? So you have to be the considered. So once we have an answer to how the data is organized and are now looking at a nice rows and column based on the data set, so we should identify what each row actually represents. Okay. So once we have answered right, so how the data is going to be organized and now looking at that rows and column based data set. So we should identify what each row's column represents. And this step is usually very quick and can also help it out. Uh, so this step is very usually very quick and should also help it out the things in perspective much more quickly as well. Okay, so first what how the general rule of thing what is going to be say that is the data what we're having that should be organized one. So we have to check whether that should be in the form of rows and then columns. Suppose example, suppose we are going to find the way to transform the text in rows and columns structure by counting the number of words and then phrases and then what should the each row represents. So for that, so the data is going to be organized and then now we are going to look at this rows and column based data set. So this step is very quick and it should also help to put the things in perspective more quickly. And next question what is getting here is what does each column represent. So for that we should identify the each column by level of the data and whether or not is it say quantitative or qualitative. And this kind of categorization might change our analysis progress as well, but it is important to begin this step as early as possible, right? So what is the data I'm collecting that should be done before that is, so what the column represent is and what the row represent is. So the row represent just what I said should be in the form of rows so that you can able to organize it very clearly is the first one. And second one is that the column representation also very important. And we have to be thinking of whether the data is in level of the data like nominal, ordinal or ratio scale like this. And we have to think it over whether it should be comes under qualitative one and quantitative one, and then the characterization should be carried out to begin this step as early as possible. So, are there any missing data points here? So the data is not perfect. Sometimes we might going to miss the data because of human and then mechanical error. So what happens when the data scientist must make decisions about how to deal with these discrepancies is the other one. So what happens when the data scientist must take decisions about how to they're going to deal with these discrepancies. So for that, what you have to do is have to perform any transformations on the column. So depending on this type or level of the data in each column, so we can able to perform certain type of transformations. So for example, or generally speaking, saying this is that this the statistical modeling or machine learning should be normally going to make the transformations, and you can also make use the Python as the language to make any or all transformations. So when the data is going to be happened, right? So the data scientists have to take some decisions. So what kind of transformations can I apply on the columns and then rows? So for before that, we have to identify what type of data or level it is. We have to identify. So based on that, we have to perform some transformations. For example, so generally speaking, for the sake of statistical modeling and machine learning, so would like to each column to be numerical and then use Python to make and all transformations. And then last one is that modeling the data is the next step. So this step also going to be uses of some statistical and machine learning models. So in these steps, normally it's going to be seen not only fitting and choosing the models. So we are implanting mathematical validation metrics in order to quantify the models and their effectiveness. So communicate and visualize the results. So this is arguably the most important step. So while it might seem some obvious and simple, so the ability to conclude your results in digestible format is much more difficult than it seems. So the modeling the data, so first answering the questions, make the questionnaire, and then what we have to do, we have to obtain the data, gather it, and then explore the data, so whether it is proper order or not, and then model the data. So for this modeling, what we have to do is we have to make use of this statistics or machine learning models. So in these steps, now we all the time we have to focus not only fitting and choosing models. So we have to incorporate some of the mathematical validation metrics in order to in order to identify the quality of the models and then effectiveness. Next, communication and visualization, the results also are very important. So the communications, what I said previously, that should be in the form of like bar chart, where you can able to represent the form of bar diagram, pie diagram, and pictogram, line graph, like this. So I can able to show the results in this form of different ways, and this is ultimately the most important step. So because it might seem obvious and simple, but ability to conclude your results in a digestible format, and that should be more difficult than it seems. So these are the steps what we have to be followed in the data science normally. Okay, so first thing is that, so in this video, what I said is that, so data science. So the data science should be the thing which can able to see how we're going to take the data and then acquiring the knowledge, and how what kind of things using that knowledge you can able to make decisions and can able to predict the future, understand the past and present, and create the new industries and products. And then mathematics and computer programming and domain knowledge also can able to do. So for that. So the three basic areas what I can able to do with the mathematics, computer programming, and domain knowledge. So by seeing this Venn diagram, so this is the subject expertise, and then mesh hacking skills, and then math and statistical knowledge. So the data science should be a combination of these three things like machine learning, organizer, and the trends. So there are different kinds of levels like structure and structure, which should also commonly called as organized and unorganized, and the quantitative and qualitative as well. And the organized thing means where the data is going to be shown in the form of rows and columns, and unorganized means which should be a free of form, so normally called as raw text or raw audio signals and video. So structure and unstructured means where the data is going to be represented by making some observation characteristics. Unstructured means where it should be not be follow any kind of standard organization hierarchy. And different levels of data what we have here should be quantitative and qualitative. So again, this qualitative is going to be classified into terms like nominal one and ordinal one, and the quantity should be discrete and continuous. So these are the four levels of data normally. So whatever the data we gather, that should be extract should comes to see that in uh, which level it will come. So whether it should be nominal or ordinal or ratio or discrete, we have to be thinking of. So nominal means it should be gender or high color and authenticity should come in the nominal level. And ordinal means first, second, third letter ABC, economic status low, medium, high. And discrete means number of students in the class, number of workers in the company, number of home brands. And continuous means height of children like this. So there are 5 steps of data science. There should be structure or maybe a step-by-step process. So answering the first question is the thing obtaining, exploring, modeling, and then communicating and visualizing the results. So asking interesting questions. So all the time you have to treat this step as the brainstorming one, and all the time you have to be start questioning doubts in a way in such a way that we have to be twofold. So first of all, what you have to do is should not start biasing yourself even before searching for the data, and secondly, obtaining the data both in public and then private locations. So obtaining the data means we're unable to uh, see that whether the data is going to become from a variety of sources or not. That should be becomes the creative step, and exploring the data should be the private step in this process. So we can make use of various domains for exploring and the tools that are available for exploring the data. And sometimes I can able to make use of this Python packages pandas to can able to explore the data. So some of the basic questions for data exploration means when looking for a new data set, whether data is organized or not, and general rule of thumb that should be converting into rows and columns or not. So what does each row represent and what does each column represent, and is there any missing data points? This and all the things we have to be considered when exploring the data, and whether I can able to apply any kind of transformations. Normally Python or some other tools are available, and then finally you can able to model the data, and then we can finally how to communicate and visualize the results. So this is the final step of this steps of the data science. Thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.